How's everybody doing today?
We're good.
Doing well. Another beautiful day. My name is Derrick Broze. I'm happy to be here. This is my first time running for mayor, but I've been here in Houston my entire life. I'm 34 years old. I actually spent the first 10 years of my life not far from here, just down the road a little bit. But I spent the last decade of my life involved in journalism here in the city of Houston, as well as various forms of community activism, doing everything from protests to building community gardens, community houses, showing documentary screenings, raising money for various charities, as well as, on the journalistic side of things, working to expose corruption in the city of Houston, specifically in the current mayoral administration, in the previous administration, and the current police administration, and in the previous police administration, working on a number of stories ranging from human trafficking, from surveillance tools, to environmental issues here in the city of Houston. So I spent a lot of time focused on that, looking at the powers that be and trying to raise important questions, trying to put a camera and a microphone in their face and see if they are willing to answer when you put that fire under their feet. And the reason I do so is because I believe that it's up to us as individuals, as the people of Houston, the citizens of Houston, to hold our elected officials accountable. That's at least what I was taught growing up. And as I've gotten older and gotten involved in activism, got a little bit more experience, I realized that's not really how things run, that there's actually a club. You may have heard this from George Carlin. There's a big club and most of us ain't in it. And it seems like that's how things run when it comes to City Hall, as well as on the state and the federal level. But while most folks spend their energy, especially I would say my generation and younger, worrying about what's going on the federal level or maybe what's going on in other countries, as important as those things are, I try to put my focus on what's happening here in Houston. And there's a lot of opportunity in our city for us to take some big stances and to make big changes in this community. And there's three main issues that I'm going to focus on today. On my website, we have 9 main issues that we're raising on our platform, and my website's just derrickbroze.com, my full name. But what I want to focus on today, the first thing is flooding, of course. Flooding is an important issue, and as Mr. Baker was saying, there's some real basic things that we could do that just aren't being done. We could actually allocate funds and put them towards what they're supposed to go towards. You know, just do what we're supposed to do, actually respect the will of the voters and the people. You know, we could talk about creating more allotments for rainwater and for flooding water, but I also think that the reality is that more and more people are starting to understand that Houston is an unsustainable city, that we are living very close to sea level. Galveston's right there, we get hurricanes, and this is something that going into the future generations, into the people coming after me and coming after all of us are going to have to deal with in the next 50 to 100 years on how they live in a city that is increasingly unsustainable, how they can actually tackle flooding in a realistic way. And so what I'm proposing, in addition to those more traditional suggestions, is a plan that we're calling Hemp Houston. And it might seem a little new to some of you, but the idea is to embrace the cannabis plant, which, when it's not psychoactive, is known as hemp. Some of you, I'm sure, may remember that hemp can be used for fiber. Hemp can be used for fuel. Hemp is also a great boon to the environment. It grows extremely fast. It drinks a lot of water. I've worked with the Buffalo Bayou Partnership about some of the waterways around the Houston area. They've said the reason plants don't grow so well is because of erosion. Before they can get roots, they're washed off. With a plant like hemp or bamboo, we could actually start planting, creating more green spaces all around the city of Houston, which would help with the rainwater, with the flooding water, and embrace that. Now, for me, this Hemp Houston plan, though, is not just about planting industrial farming and hemp, but also I want to completely decriminalize cannabis in Houston, which again may seem like a radical idea to some, but I will say this: whether you choose to imbibe cannabis recreationally or not, I think many folks in here might be aware that cannabis is also a medicine. I have an 84-year-old grandmother who still lives on her farm in Kentucky, and she's probably out in her garden right now working for a little bit. And when she starts to get her arthritis and her pain, she goes to CBD for medicine because she doesn't want to be on 10 different pills, right? So whether you're talking medically, recreationally, or just handling the flooding issue, this Hemp Houston plan that we're proposing could help create a brand new industry in Houston. So that's one of the things. It's taking on flooding, but it's also, I think, can help end the drug war, help decrease the criminal justice system that we have here in Houston, which I personally went through 15 years ago. 15 years ago, prior to this, I was addicted to drugs when I was 20 years old. I went to prison. I changed my life around, and this is what I've been doing since then. So I know firsthand the impact of that system. So I think by embracing that, we can go after flooding, we can start to end the drug war, which would reduce crime in Houston because we could actually allocate resources towards violent crimes and human trafficking. And there are some other issues. Unfortunately, I'm low on time here, but we'll talk more about that, and I hope you guys will look more into my plan, because we're trying to do something completely new in Houston with respect to the elders that have come before us and respect to the generations coming after us. Thank you.
Thank you.
On the issue of the police officers, I would not initially hire more police officers. What I would attempt to do first is to give a shot at actually using the resources we have available. Again, I do think we have a mismanagement problem all across the city, department to department. As a mayor, one of the things you get to do, one of the first things you get to do is to assign a police chief and to really set the tone for what kind of police department you're going to bring into the city and you're going to encourage in the city. So I don't think the answer is just immediately to hire more police when we already have a good amount of police around the city, but they're being misallocated, they're being misused. And again, I'll bring it back to the issue of the drug war. I mentioned a few moments ago that, like I said, I went into college, I got into drugs, my whole life spun out, and I ended up addicted to drugs and going to prison. And I got to spend time in prison because of drugs. And I changed my life around the last 10 years, but not everybody is able to make those changes. And I experienced that system firsthand, and I see how many people's lives are ruined because of the drug war. What I think the real solution is as we start to end that drug war around the United States, do that in Houston as well. What you end up with is a situation where you have millions and millions of dollars. I'm talking about $35 million just in the last 2 years alone since they started diverting cannabis, marijuana cases. $35 million that then could be used to go after violent crimes, could be used to go after human trafficking, could be used to go after real crime. So I think the answer is to use the police force we have available and to use it in a way that's actually going to be effective. And that's not what's happening right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're not going towards those areas. So that's an obvious change that needs to happen. And I think that we could chalk it up to the current administration, but I think unfortunately the reality is we have entrenched corruption within City Hall. It's not just this current mayor and a few people here and there. There are officials that have been in City Hall who have continued these practices for some time. So I think if we're going to address flooding and other issues, we need to address the corruption issue as well. Now, as it goes particularly with flooding, with the bayou and the waterways and the flooding that comes from those areas, in addition to, it was mentioned about Fifth Ward, which is where I live, and about trash being into the drains and the ditches. One of the first plans we're putting forward as part of our Hemp Houston plan is to clean up the bayou, to actually clean up the waterways. I've actually worked with the Buffalo Bayou Partnership. I've been down there putting my hands in the soil and working with them, helping them weed, helping learn about how the bayou flows and why they have so much trouble with erosion. And as I said earlier, with innovative ideas like bringing in more green space around Houston and maybe not tearing down everything that we see and building a parking lot or building a parking garage, we could actually help decrease the amount of flooding that does take place. And I think we also need to acknowledge that Houston might not be a sustainable city for the future. I don't know what the perfect political answer is, but when you start seeing the forecast for what's coming, we might have to accept that flooding could become more normalized than we want, and we need to accept that and look for realistic solutions.
Thank you. You want to expand on that? You have a couple of... No, you're done. Okay.
I'll take his time.
Derrick Broze.
Yes, absolutely. There should be limits on that. There's been a lot of talk. Mr. Busby does a good job, as well as Mr. King, about pointing out some of the corruption that's going on. And if you check out my website, you'll hear more about it. What I'm going to use my time to talk about is just one example of this corruption, where friends of the mayor or people who go out for fancy lunches end up getting big contracts. And again, it eliminates every voter in this room from having a say in the matter, whatever it may be. So one example of this, which also will affect your community, is the infrastructure issue, specifically the rollout of some of the new technology that we were just hearing about, smart technology, 5G technology, the smart grid technology, the Internet of Things that the current mayor has celebrated and is really in support of. Last summer, he was given an award by the telephone lobby. It's called the CTIA, Cellular Telephone Internet Association. They gave him the 5G Wireless Champion Award for removing all restrictions and regulations to help this new infrastructure come in. Again, eliminating your opportunity to have a voice in this. And then about 2 months later, the mayor announces a brand new contract with Verizon for the city of Houston. And then a month later, they announced the world's first 5G customer. And this is going to be towers and small cells. Even if you live in a community like this, they could potentially put one in your community and you would have no say in it. And this was done by this current mayor, as well as on the state level and the federal level. So just another example of how him and his buddies, they have meetings outside of the official city hall parameters, and then they make decisions that affect all of us. And that's something that we need to change. Thank you.
Tony Busby?
Thank you all for being here today and for making time for us. So I really invite you to visit derrickbroze.com, check out the mayor page. You can see the 9 core issues that I'm focused on, including some of the things I brought up today. You know, I'm coming to you as a lifelong Houstonian, as a small business entrepreneur, as somebody who spent the last decade involved in my community and in many communities around Houston, and as somebody who has spent time as a journalist working to expose the corruption that many people here have discussed today. And I'm also coming to you as somebody who is extremely influenced by both my grandmothers to know how to respect elders, and I'm going to bring that into my leadership in the city.
Thank you very much. Mr. Tony Busby.